Good Shabbos and welcome to today's lunch break with the Rabbi. Shabbos message for today of Shabbos Parshas Chayei Sara. As we know that everything that we learn in the Torah, nothing is by coincidence, and everything and every subject and every object of the Torah, and regardless of what it seems, even maybe trivial, for some in the Torah, it is of great consequence. So as we look at this week's Torah reading, the name of the Torah reading is Chayei Sara, literally translated the life of Sara. Any person reading this week's Torah reading would see that it is anything but the life of Sara. This Torah reading begins with the passing of Sara. Not only does it continue with the passing of Sara, but it also talks about the burial of Sara, the purchase of her plot, of her tombstone. It goes on to say, as Abraham looks for a wife for his son Isaac, and the commentaries continue, and in fact the verse says that when he brought Rebekah into Sarah's tent, and he was consoled about his mother's passing, seemingly forgetting everything about his mother. But then the Torah continues to tell us that Abraham remarries to a woman named Keturah, who many commentaries explain that this was Hagar, and now she converted and he married her and had some more children with her. So if we look at the storyline of this week's Torah reading, it's anything but about the life of Sarah. In fact, it runs everything against to what Sarah's life is. Her husband goes on to have another wonderful wife. Her son goes on to have a wonderful wife and is consoled about his mother's passing. What in this week's Torah reading is about the life of Sarah? So when we look, what does it mean to define a life? There's a story told about the Baal Shem Tov. There was once a couple who was unfortunately not able to have children. And they were getting older in life, and they were very sad about it. And they came to the concept and realization that they won't be able to have children. So they went to the holy scholar and sage, the Baal Shem Tov, to ask for a blessing and some strength to get through the challenging time. When they came to the Baal Shem Tov told his wagon driver to tell the couple that we're going to go for a ride. And they go together to a village, and the Baal Shem Tov takes the couple, and they go to first see the school, the little boys' school. And they go into the boys' school, and they ask every child there, what's your names? He says, Baruch, Baruch Moshe, Baruch Yosef, Baruch Yehuda. Every child, 90% of the children, all had the name Baruch. Then he says, let's go visit the girls' school. They go to visit the girls' school, and they see every single child there again. Bracha Leah, Bracha. Every person has the name Leah or Bracha in their name. They're trying to figure it out. Why is it that everybody in the town has the same name? So they went to one of the elders of the town, and they asked them what happened. And they said about 100 years ago, there was a couple, a very simple couple. The man couldn't learn a page of Talmud, barely said some Tehillim, was someone who didn't know much about Judaism. He was a simple, God-fearing Jew. And unfortunately, they weren't blessed with children. But they were a little bit well-to-do. And thereby, once the young man, was sitting in the synagogue, and he hears the rabbi say that any person who educates another child is as if he gave birth to that child. With that, the couple decided that being that they can't have their own children, they're going to go and hire 30 teachers to teach the entire town, because he himself knew nothing about Torah, so he couldn't teach them, but to teach the entire town Torah, and opened up 2 schools, one for the boys and one for the girls, that they should be able to study Torah. When they passed, the people of the town decided that in their memory they would name the next generation after these 2 great legends. Life is not measured by what we accomplish in life, but life is measured by how we're remembered after life. When we look at these couple, Baal Shem Tov turned to these couple and said, yes, you may not have physical children, but you have an opportunity to have many spiritual children. The same idea as when we look at this week's Torah reading when it says about the life of Sarah. Abraham does in this week's Torah reading everything exactly what Sarah wanted. He lived and fulfilled her life's mission to its utmost. You know, Abraham and Sarah had a very big difference of opinion. They were married for more than 100 years, but they saw the purpose in life and they saw the view of life very differently. For example, a story is told, as we read in 2 weeks ago's Torah reading, where Abraham sees Yitzchak, or Sarah sees Yitzchak and Yishmael playing with one another, and Yishmael being a bad influence on Yitzchak. And Sarah comes along and Sarah says, get rid of this Yishmael. And Abraham says, why? What? Where? And God has to intervene to do some couples counseling and tell Abraham, you got to listen to Sarah. What happened here? What did Sarah see that Abraham didn't see? Or what did Abraham see that Sarah didn't see? And the commentaries explain, and Hasidism teaches us, that Abraham was a person who was a universalist. Abraham's name meant Av Hamoyin Goyim. He cared for every single person, Jew and non-Jew alike. Avram was not only about the Jewish nation, but he was also that every single human being in humanity should follow the 7 Noachide laws. He wanted to influence all mankind in the concepts of monotheism and the concepts of belief in God, Jew and not Jew alike. Sarah, on the other hand, was more of a practical individual. She was more concerned about the Jewish nation that was going to come from her son Isaac. And therefore she was concerned about the influences of Yishmael that may have. And therefore she needed to watch and have a good eye that her son doesn't have any influences from anything on the outside. Sarah was a person who viewed the land of Israel as the land of the Jewish people, while Avram was looking at a universal message of bringing everybody together. So throughout the life of Sarah, Avram was dedicated to his cause, educating people and teaching people about monotheism, godliness, the 7 Noachide laws, but in a universal and global message, while Sarah was looking to be able to concentrate on the Jewish people in particular. But now, as Sarah passes away, Abraham leaves his agenda to the side and says, now I am going to follow and I am going to remember my wife. I am going to internalize and eternalize the life of Sarah for eternity. And how did he do that? So now we look into this week's Torah reading. And we start with this week's Torah reading where he tells Abraham. Abraham says the first thing is he buys a plot of land in the land of Israel. He buys a burial place for Sarah by message of saying that, listen here, Sarah, you're not something forgotten. Sarah, you're not something of the past. But Sarah over here is going to have a resting place, a place where every single Jew can come at any time and any place and pray. Not only that, he wasn't going to allow to accept it by a gift, but he was going to pay top dollar for it, that he owns it, that never again should the Jewish people have to worry about a complaint that this is not theirs. That for eternity they should know that this land belongs to the Jewish people. Focus on the Jewish people, on Isaac, on her son, on the future of the Jewish people. Again, eternalizing Sarah's memory, living Sarah's legacy. Then he continues, and he gets to find a match for Isaac. And what are the instructions that he tells Eliezer, his servant? Only get somebody from my family, only from the Jewish nation, not from the Canaanites. Again, looking out for his son Isaac, just as his wife would do, and just as Isaac's mother would do. Because from Abraham's perspective, he would have taken a woman from anybody. He was a universal fellow. But Sarah was the one that zoomed in and said, no, the Jewish nation is unique. There's a message for the world, but for the Jewish people, there's a unique quality. And finally, we come to the last step of Abraham's life. Yes, Abraham remarries and marries Keturah with 7 other children. But before Abraham's passing, he calls those children and he gives them gifts. And he calls the Ishmaelites and he gives them gifts. To say, listen here, yes, you are my children, my universalist, so therefore I'm giving you a gift. But inheritance is only one. The Jewish people's continuity, that is from Yitzchak. This is what we see. Why this week's Torah reading is called The Life of Sara. Because this week we come to appreciate the legacy of Sara comes to life. The legacy of Sara is not that what she passed, not that she died, but that even after her passing, her ethos and values, her concentration on her son to be the future of the Jewish people was alive and well. The message for us is obvious and very clear. Every single one of us lives a life. We accumulate things. We accumulate objects. We've done a lot of things in this world. But what is our life? True life, divine life, is only as what was perpetuated, what is continued for eternity. True life is only if the children continue the legacy of their parents. As our sages tell us, if their children are alive, then they are very well alive. The true lasting legacy that you can do for a person who passed is not just to remember them of something of the past, but to continue their values in our lives. And then they're not only something of the past, but they're very much alive in everything we do. May God bless us for a wonderful Shabbos, that we continue to do the values and the ethos that we've been taught by our matriarch Sara, and continuing with Rebecca. As we know the three special mitzvahs that Sara did with the challah, the lighting candles, and the cloud, the welcoming of guests. Rebecca continued that, and Abraham gave every single one of his children the love of God, the love for one fellow, to be able to be those agents of Almighty God. Or as Eliezer tells us in this week's Torah reading, that every single one of us, we are just Eved Avram Anoichi, we are just servants of Almighty God, doing our mission, bringing this world to its ultimate perfection, the coming of Mashiach. God bless you, have a good Shabbos, and wishing you the very best for a wonderful week ahead. Looking forward to seeing you again on Monday at 1 p.m., lunch break with the Rabbi. God bless you, and have a great day and a good Shabbos.